Hi guys, welcome to the Career Sprints YouTube channel. My name is Rohit and in this video we will solve 10 PMP test questions. And the way we are going to do this is as follows. First, I'll read the question and the options. Then you can pause the video and try to solve the question. Third, I'll give the correct answer and explain the options. So let's get started. So question number 1. A company is making the switch from predictive to adaptive delivery techniques. The company made the decision to recruit you as a Scrum Master to help with this shift. Since the teams are not cross-functional and cannot produce incremental value, you are aware that the current team structures are ineffective. As a result, it is decided to alter the team's makeup and you have been given the task of doing so. What type of team members would you select for the Agile team? Option A. Specialists who have deep expertise in design, documentation, development, and testing. Option B. Team leaders with a focus on leadership so that everyone can serve as a team leader. Option C. T-shaped individuals who are experts in one but can also contribute in other areas. Option D. Integration experts, since an Agile team must integrate the solution before every release. So you can pause the video, think about the answer, and choose your answer. So let's look at the correct answer. So in this question, it says, since the teams are not cross-functional and cannot produce incremental value, you are aware that the current team structures are ineffective. So basically in this question, what they are saying is that the current team structure is ineffective. And as a result, you have to change the team's makeup or change the team's arrangement. And you have to decide what type of team member are you going to select for the Agile team. So the correct answer for this question is going to be option C. Now let's look at the other options and let's try to eliminate the other options and see why C is correct and the others are wrong. So let's look at option A. It says specialists who have deep expertise in design, documentation, development, and testing. So this answer is going to be incorrect because this is just not about a software team. Agile can be used in any type of setup, in any type of team, or in any type of organization. So option A is going to be wrong. So I'm just going to mark this as wrong. Team leaders with a focus on leadership so that everyone can serve as a team leader. That option is also going to be wrong because everyone in the team cannot be a leader. Option D, integration experts, since an Agile team must integrate the solution before every release. So in Agile, the team itself is responsible for integration. So there is no project manager role or there is no separate person that is needed in the team who is going to be responsible just for integration. So that's a team responsibility. Option C is the most appropriate option because T-shaped individuals are basically people who have deep expertise in one area but can also contribute in other areas. So maybe if you are a developer, you have deep expertise in development, but you can also contribute with documentation, testing, or any other area of the team's work. So these are types of people who are best suited for an Agile team. So you can look up T-shaped individuals, broken comb, paintbrush. Those are all examples of the types of people that you would select for an Agile team. So that is question number 1. And the correct answer and the explanation is given here, so you can just read that on your own. So question number 2. A stakeholder brings a new feature to the product owner and asks him to include it in the next sprint. The stakeholder is quite adamant on getting this feature included in the upcoming sprint and threatens that he would escalate it to the company's senior executives if the feature is not included. What is the best course of action for the product owner to take? Option A. Ignore the stakeholder's request and let him escalate it to senior management. Understand the root cause of the request and try to negotiate delivery. That's option B. Option C. Discuss it with the Scrum Master so that it can be included. And option D. Educate the stakeholder on how the product backlog is prioritized and estimated. So take a couple of seconds, pause the video, think about the answer, and choose your answer. Alright, let's go over the answer. So the first thing that you need to notice here is in the question, they're asking what is the best course of action for the product owner to take. So a stakeholder has brought a feature request to a product owner. Now let's look at the options. It says ignore the stakeholder's request and let him escalate it to senior management. That is generally not a good option because you cannot ignore stakeholders. That's an extreme reaction, and extreme reactions are not the best way anyone with a sound mind would try to take a decision. So that option is going to be wrong. So let's just eliminate that. Understand the root cause of the request and try to negotiate delivery. So let's just put a dot here. Let's not choose this as the answer yet. Discuss it with the Scrum Master so that it can be included. You're the product owner. The stakeholders has brought the request, the feature request to you. You're the person who makes the decisions on feature requests, right? So you are supposed to make that decision, not the Scrum Master. So this is going to be wrong. Educate the stakeholder on how the product backlog is prioritized and estimated. Now the stakeholder is adamant on getting this feature included in the upcoming sprint and is threatening that he or she would escalate it to the company's senior execs. So educating the stakeholder on how the product backlog is prioritized and estimated is also not going to help. It would be a better strategy to understand why the stakeholder is behaving in this way, why the stakeholder wants the feature to be included in the next sprint, and then try to talk through with the stakeholder and try to negotiate the delivery of this feature. So that would be a better choice to make. So option B is going to be right and option D is going to be incorrect. So when you go to the next slide, you can see the correct answer is given and the explanation is given, so you can just read through that. So question number 3. A Scrum team is in the generate insights phase during a sprint retrospective. As part of this activity, the team decides to look at the root causes that emerge throughout an iteration and decides to create a diagram to better represent the causes. Which method are they using? So option A is brainstorming, option B is improvement kata, option C is fishbone diagram, and option D is context diagram. So take a couple of seconds, pause the video and think about the answer. So let's look at the correct answer. So it says, as part of this activity, the team decides to look at the root causes. So that's the main word here, the root causes that emerge throughout an iteration and decides to create a diagram to better represent the causes. Which method are they using? So option A is brainstorming. So although brainstorming can be used to identify root causes of problems, it is not necessarily a diagrammatic technique. So option A is going to be wrong. Option B is the improvement kata. Improvement kata basically is a concept or a method in Lean, and it basically helps you with iteratively experimenting and improving your day-to-day activities or any kind of improvement goal that you might have. You can use the improvement kata to accomplish that improvement goal through various iterations. So that is also going to be incorrect. That's not the right answer. Fishbone diagram. So let's just put a dot here. Let's not put as the correct answer. Context diagram. So context diagram is another concept in PMP wherein you use a context diagram to show how one entity interacts with other users or other systems. So for example, you may have a software system and you can create a context diagram which shows how the software system is interacting with other systems or users. So context diagram will also not be correct because this is not really a root cause analysis technique. So that option is going to be wrong. So the correct answer is going to be the fishbone diagram. So fishbone diagram looks something like this. So you will draw a straight line. At the tip, you're going to write what the cause is, and then you're going to create a fishbone, like the bones or the fins of a fish, and at the tip of these fins you are going to write down the causes for whatever defect or whatever issue that you're trying to find the root cause to. So this is an example of a fishbone diagram, and this is a root cause analysis technique, so that would be the correct answer. So let's just see what the answer is. It says the Agile retrospectives are meetings meant to identify potential areas of improvement within an iteration. The 5 stages of an Agile retrospective are set the stage, gather data, generate insights, decide what to do, close the retrospective. Then it says data gathering techniques that can be used in a retrospective include fishbone analysis. So anyways, you can go through this slide, and but the correct answer is going to be the fishbone diagram. So question number 4. You're an experienced functional manager who has managed different teams throughout your career. However, now management wants you to lead Agile teams. You recently sat through an Agile class and learned that Agile leadership styles are different from traditional techniques. What type of leadership style would you employ to lead Agile teams? Option A, laissez-faire leadership, allowing the team to make their own decisions and establish their own goals. Option B, transactional leadership, focus on goals, feedback, and accomplishments to determine rewards, management by exception. Option C, servant leadership, demonstrating commitment to serve and put other people first, focuses on other people's growth, learning, development, autonomy, and well-being. Option D is transformational leadership. This word is transformational leadership, empowering followers through idealized attributes and behaviors, inspirational motivation, encouragement for innovation and creativity, and individual consideration. So take a couple of seconds, think about the answer, and choose your answer. So let's look at the correct answer. So it says you are an experienced functional manager who has managed different teams throughout your career, and management wants you to lead agile teams, and you sat through an agile class and you learned that agile leadership styles are different from traditional techniques. So what type of leadership style would you employ? So option A, laissez-faire leadership. So this is a type of leadership where the leader takes totally a hands-off approach and just lets the team do whatever they want. This will not be the right answer, because in this type of leadership style, you're not involved with the team at all, and that is also not something that we want when we are working in an agile setup. So that option is going to be wrong. Transactional leadership. Transactional leadership is also going to be an incorrect answer, because a transactional leader is a very give or take type of leader. So for example, when you're working with contractors, you give them work, you give them money, and they deliver the work to you. So in this type of leadership, there is no leading that's really happening. There is no motivation for the contractor as such, apart from the motivation of money. So this will also be an incorrect answer. Servant leader, demonstrating commitment to serve and put other people first, focuses on other people's growth, learning, development, autonomy, and well-being. So let's just put a dot here. And then option D, transformational, empowering followers through idealized attributes and behaviors, inspirational motivation, encouragement for innovation and creativity, and individual consideration. So if you notice, servant leader and transformational leader, they are very similar, but transformational leader will not be the correct answer, because in transformational leadership, the focus of the leader is towards the organization and organizational objectives, whereas servant leaders are more focused on the people whom they are leading, basically on their followers. So servant leadership techniques are used by Scrum Masters and is one of the core leadership ways or techniques that is used within agile team. So as a Scrum Master or as a servant leader, you're going to give your team some autonomy. You're going to create learning opportunities for your team members. You're going to help the team become more self-organized. You're going to help the team remove impediments, and you're going to be invested in the team's growth. You want the team to become a better version of themselves every single day, or every iteration. So servant leader would be the more appropriate answer, and transformational leadership will be incorrect, because like I said, the focus here is a lot on ensuring that these individuals who are working in the team, they work towards fulfilling organizational objectives. So although similar in terms of its relationship with servant leader, but not the same thing. So the answer would be C. So you can look at the explanation for question 4 on this slide as well. So let's look at question number 5. A project manager returned from a 2-week sick leave and was informed that one of the project stakeholders emailed the team daily, issued new work, and was trying to micromanage the team's work. However, the team disregarded the stakeholders' interference and continued working. However, other parties in the project are worried about the stakeholders' behavior and possible future interference. What must the project manager do? Option A, instruct other project stakeholders to ignore the stakeholder just as the team did. Option B, invite everyone to a meeting and work through the communication issue. Option C, have a private conversation with the stakeholder and resolve the problem. Option D, investigate the problem to find the root cause. So take a couple of seconds, pause the video, and think about the answer. So let's look at the answer. So in this question, the project manager returned from a sick leave and was informed that one of the stakeholders was being a pain, right? So the stakeholder emailed the team daily, issued new work, and was trying to micromanage the team. the team disregarded the stakeholders' interference and they just kept on working. But there are other stakeholders in the team or other parties in the project who are worried about the stakeholders' behavior. So what should be the project manager's next course of action? So option A, instruct the project stakeholders to ignore the stakeholder just as the team did. This is an incorrect option because this is an extreme answer, right? You just don't ignore stakeholders like that, right? The stakeholder may be being a pain, but there could be a reason why this person is being a pain. So option A is wrong. Option B, invite everyone to a meeting and work through the communication issue. This is not really a communication issue, so this would also not be the right answer, right? Maybe the project manager would be better off trying to find out why this is going on. So option B is wrong. Option C, have a private conversation with the stakeholder and resolve the problem. So this is a good option, but let's see what option D says. Investigate the problem to find the root cause. So although option C also seems like a good answer, option D would be the better answer here, because as a project manager, you have to always think about why a problem is happening before you jump to a conclusion or try to resolve the problem. So option C, where it says have a private conversation and resolve the problem, you're directly trying to jump to the resolution and trying to solve the problem. But before you do that, you have to consider why the problem is occurring in the first place. Hence option D is going to be the better answer. After the project manager does D, then the project manager can maybe jump into a room with the stakeholder and try to talk through with the stakeholder. So option D is going to be the correct answer. So if you go to the next slide again, the explanation is given, so you can read through the explanation. All right, so let's move on to the next question, question number 6. So question 6 says, an experienced project manager is tasked with carrying out a project in a tightly regulated industry. A high-level project executive asked the project manager to make changes that could have legal implications. What must be the project manager's first course of action? So the options are immediately schedule a meeting with the stakeholders to review the situation, issue a change request to the change authority and implement it, seek legal guidance and assistance from the organization's compliance department, check the organization's lessons learned database for examples and direction. So I'm going to give you a couple of seconds so that you can think through the answer and choose your answer. So let's look at the answer. So it says, an experienced project manager is tasked with carrying out a project in a tightly regulated industry. So the key word here is tightly regulated industry. A high-level project exec asked the project manager to make changes that could have legal implications. So this is another key word, legal implications, and you should need to choose what is going to be the project manager's first course of action. So option A, it says immediately schedule a meeting with the stakeholders to review the situation. So this option, let's just put a dot here. Let's look at the other options. So option B, issue a change request to the change authority and implement it. This is not going to be the correct answer. The reason is before the project manager directly goes and issues a change request, the project manager needs to understand why this change is being requested. So that would not be the correct answer. The project manager would not just go and issue a change request and implement the change. It is a tightly regulated industry. There are legal implications. So project manager should do some critical thinking and analysis before they implement the change. So option B is going to be wrong. Next is seek legal guidance and assistance from the organization's compliance department. So let's just put a dot here. So this could be possibly a good answer. Then option D, check the organization's lessons learned database for examples and direction. So this will also not be a correct answer because although the project manager can check the lessons learned database for examples and direction, right? Because we are in a tightly regulated industry, probably the better option would be to seek legal guidance from the compliance department or seek some kind of legal counsel. So this option is also going to be wrong. So option C is going to be the correct answer. But let's look at option A. Immediately schedule a meeting with the stakeholders to review the situation. So scheduling a meeting in this answer would not be the most appropriate thing to do because the change has already been requested. So there is nothing really to review anymore, right? The idea is to understand that because you're in a tightly regulated industry, you should get legal guidance because the change could have legal implications. So C would be the more appropriate answer here. So you can see here, the correct answer is given as C, and you can go ahead and read the explanation on your own. So let's look at question number 7. A product owner feels there are too many meetings scheduled in the project. This is impacting the product owner's ability to perform her product owner responsibilities. Therefore, the product owner asks the Agile project manager to reduce the priority and frequency of some meetings for her. Which of these meeting frequencies can be reduced for the product owner so that it reduces the impact on her work? Choose 2 answers. So the options are product backlog refinement meetings, sprint planning meetings, daily stand-up meetings, iteration review meetings, and project status review meetings. So I'm going to give you a couple of seconds so that you can think about the answer and choose your answers. So let's look at the answer. So in this question, it says a product owner feels that there are too many meetings are scheduled in the project, and therefore the project manager asks the Agile project manager to reduce the priority and the frequency. So let's look at the correct answer. So in this question, basically a product owner feels that there are too many meetings that she is involved in, and she's asked the Agile project manager to reduce the priority and the frequency of some of the meetings for her. And you have to decide which of those 2 meetings she can attend less, or the frequency of it can be reduced. So let's look at the answer. So the first option is product backlog refinement meeting. So a product owner is supposed to attend a product backlog refinement meeting. In fact, the product owner is accountable for the product backlog. So in a product backlog refinement meeting, whenever it is done during the sprint, the product owner has to be present with the team, and the team and the product owner are going to split stories. They're going to estimate the stories. They're going to add testing criteria to the stories. They're going to just refine the story and make it better so that they are sprint ready. So this is a very important meeting in which the product owner has to be present in. So this option would be incorrect. Next is sprint planning meeting. Again, in sprint planning meeting, the product owner is meeting with the team, and the team is assigning estimates to the stories. They are asking clarifying questions to the product owner about the stories or about the product backlog items. So this meeting is primarily, it involves the product owner and the team. So with the Scrum Master just facilitating this meeting. So the sprint planning meeting is also a very essential meeting in which the product owner has to be there, because the team is planning the sprint and the product owner needs to be there to answer any questions that the team has. So this would also be the incorrect answer. Let's look at option C, daily stand-up meeting. So let's just put a dot here. This is actually a meeting that is run by the team, right? So the team is accountable for running the daily stand-up meeting. So let's just put a dot here. Iteration review meetings. Iteration review basically means a sprint review meeting. So when we talk about an iteration review meeting, this is where the team is doing a demonstration to the customer. So the product owner also has to be there in this meeting. So, even the product owner will be there in this meeting to receive feedback from the customer or the end users, to update the release plan or to update the product backlog. So the presence of the product owner is extremely critical and essential in this meeting. So this will also be the incorrect answer. So obviously the options that are left are the daily stand-up meeting. So although the product owner must make all attempts to attend the daily stand-up meeting, however, if you read the Scrum guide or if you read any other Agile manuals or books, the product owner's attendance in the daily stand-up is optional. Even if the product owner does attend the daily stand-up meeting, the product owner could just be there as an observer, standing in that meeting, may not necessarily even talk in the meeting or contribute in the meeting in a significant way, because this meeting is primarily being done by the team. So busy product owners can sometimes skip daily stand-up meetings, but it should not become a norm, because that's also not right for the project. Next is project status review meeting. The thing is, a project status review meeting may not even be necessary in an agile environment. And the reason for that is you're anyways doing a sprint review meeting or an iteration review meeting in which you are showing the increment to the stakeholders and to the users, and they are giving you feedback. Plus, you may be using big visible charts which automatically give anyone at a glance status updates about what's happening in the project. So if a meeting like this is required in the project, then product owners may want to attend this, and it may be necessary for them to attend it. But like I said, it is not as compulsory as being in the product backlog refinement meeting, the sprint planning meeting, and the iteration review meeting. So this is also going to be the correct answer. So basically the question was about which of the meeting frequencies can be reduced for the product owner. So daily stand-up and project status review meetings would be the correct answer. So obviously you can go to the next page or to the next slide, and you can see the correct answers are C and E, and you can read the explanation. So let's look at question number 8. So question 8 says, an agile team is trying new practices within their iterations. Some practices which they've introduced are collective code ownership, refactoring, root cause analysis, and pay per use. Which agile framework is the team using? So the options are Kanban, Scrum, Crystal, and Extreme Programming. So this question is basically all about remembering where these practices originate from. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about the answer and choose your answer. So let's look at the correct answer. So basically the question was, they gave you some practices like collective code ownership, refactoring, root cause analysis, and pay per use, and they're asking you under which agile framework are these practices used. So the correct answer for this question is going to be Extreme Programming. It is not going to be Crystal. It is not going to be Scrum, and it is not going to be Kanban. Please excuse me for my arrows. Some of them look like a plus. But the correct answer is Extreme Programming, because all these practices like collective code ownership, refactoring, they're all practices that fall under Extreme Programming. They are the secondary practices. So Extreme Programming has some primary practices. For example, sit together, whole team, information workspace, pair programming. These are some examples of primary practices. But collective code ownership, refactoring, root cause analysis, and pay per use, they're all secondary practices. You can look into them a little more deeply to understand what each of them mean. I'm not going to explain that here, but the answer here is going to be Extreme Programming. But these are also other agile frameworks. So Kanban is another agile framework, Scrum is another agile framework, Crystal is another agile framework. So if you go to the Agile Practice Guide, you will see the list which explains what are the primary practices in each of these frameworks. And like in Extreme Programming, there are also secondary practices. So it's going to give you the list of both primary and secondary practices. So if you go to the next page, you will be able to see the correct answer. So you can just read through the answer on your own. So let's look at question number 9. So question 9 says, a project manager working with a global virtual project team is given a fixed budget and a tight delivery deadline. The project manager wants to ensure that the project does not suffer from scope creep and that the team remains focused on delivering agreed requirements. How can the project manager ensure this objective is met? Option A. The project manager must ensure that the team meets daily so that there is transparency of the work amongst team members. The project manager must control all scope changes and ensure that they go through a change control process prior to getting incorporated. The project manager must ensure that detailed requirements are captured at the outset to avoid confusion. And option D, the project manager should announce a change freeze throughout the project duration. So I'm going to give you a couple of seconds. You can think about the answer and choose your answer. So let's look at the correct answer. So basically in this project, the project manager is working with a virtual team. They've been given a fixed budget. There is a tight delivery deadline. And the PM wants to ensure that the project does not suffer from scope creep. So this is a key word here, scope creep, and that the team remains focused on delivering agreed requirements. Right. So the objective in this project is to ensure that the scope does not go out of hand, right? It does not just keep expanding indefinitely. So let's look at option A. The project manager must ensure that the team meets daily so that there is transparency of the work amongst team members. So although if there is transparency amongst team members, they can be more collaborative and they will be able to deliver the goal of the sprint or of the project. That does not stop the project from getting into scope creep or the project scopes constantly expanding. So that option is going to be wrong. So the team may be able to deliver to agreed requirements, but still the scope can expand indefinitely either way. So that is wrong. Option B, the project manager must control all scope changes and ensure that they go through a change control process prior to getting incorporated. So this sounds like a good option. So we will choose this. We're just going to put a dot here and evaluate the other options. The project manager must ensure that detailed requirements are captured at the outset to avoid confusion. So although, if you do capture detailed requirements right at the beginning of the project, it is going to ensure that the scope is properly captured and that the team knows what they need to deliver. That still does not change the fact that some stakeholder or some customer can ask for a couple of changes to be made to the project or ask the project scope to be changed in some way, and that can result in scope creep. So having detailed requirements does not prevent the project from getting into scope creep. So this option is also going to be incorrect. So let's look at option D. The project manager should announce a change freeze throughout the project duration. This will also not be a good answer, because although if you put a change freeze, basically it means that no changes can be made in the project or during the project. But if a change is a good change and it is going to benefit the project, you want such changes to be incorporated. But obviously you want such changes to be analyzed, thought through, and then you're going to implement that change. So having a blanket ban on changes is never a good idea, because if a change is good and if you don't incorporate that change, it can just undermine the business case or undermine the original reason or the goal why the project was being undertaken. So this is also going to be an incorrect answer. So what you typically want to do as a project manager is that if a change is raised to you, you want to analyze the change. You want to check if the change is suitable for the project, is going to help the goal of the project, and then you're going to incorporate that change. So the change must be controlled. So any scope changes or any other types of changes, they must be controlled and go through a change control process. So change is a very important section or concept in the PMP exam. You can expect a lot of questions from change. So it is very important to understand how changes are dealt with in an agile versus a waterfall environment. So B is going to be the correct answer. So if you go to the next page, you will be able to see the explanation why B is the correct answer. So let's look at question 10. An agile team is made up of developers, testers, business analysts, and other experts. The tester in the team walks up to the Scrum Master and requests to create a new story for a feature test case to be included in the product backlog. How should the Scrum Master respond? So the options are: the Scrum Master must ask the tester to include the test as part of the definition of ready. The Scrum Master must account for extra time within the sprint for testing activities. The Scrum Master must agree to the tester's request and create a new backlog item for testing. And option D, the Scrum Master must ask the team to adjust the user story size to reflect the testing work. So I'm going to give you a couple of seconds so that you can think about the answer and choose your answer. So let's look at the correct answer. So in this question, what basically has happened is that the tester has walked up to the Scrum Master, and the tester is asking the Scrum Master to create a new user story for a test that he or she wants to include as part of that story. How should the Scrum Master respond to this? So let's look at option A. The Scrum Master must ask the tester to include the test as part of the definition of ready. So if you understand the meaning of definition of ready, the definition of ready is basically a checklist criteria that you use prior to starting a sprint. So you use the definition of ready to check whether a user story has been broken down or written appropriately or not, so that it can be picked up in the sprint, and it can be worked in the sprint. So the definition of ready is used to check whether user stories are sprint ready, as opposed to the definition of done, which is used at the end of the sprint to check whether a story is complete or not. The definition of ready is used prior to the starting of the sprint. So the test itself that the tester is writing, that will not be a part of the definition of ready. In the definition of ready, there could be a sentence or a checklist item saying that all user stories should have a test case or an acceptance criteria associated with it. So that sentence could be there, but the test itself is not going to be in the definition of ready. And so that will be the incorrect answer. The Scrum Master must account for extra time within the sprint for testing activities. So, any new work that is being identified within the sprint, first of all, the team will need to collaborate and figure out how they are going to accommodate that work within the sprint. And any user story that you write, it has to have a test case associated with it. If you don't have a test case associated with it, you would not know how to implement that story. And even if you implement that story, you may implement that story incorrectly, or it could be incomplete. So it is a responsibility of the team to figure out how they are going to fit the testing within the sprint. So this will also be the incorrect answer. So I'm just going to mark it as wrong. Then option C, the Scrum Master must agree to the tester's request and create a new backlog item for testing. So you don't need to necessarily create a new backlog item for testing. Normally, whenever you write a test or an acceptance criteria, you just need to include that as part of the user story card. So within the user story card itself, if you're using an online tool like Trello or Jira, you can just associate or write the test case inside of it. So that option is also going to be wrong. So you don't need to necessarily have a separate backlog item. Option D obviously is the correct answer. So the Scrum Master must ask the team to adjust the user story size to reflect the testing work. So obviously the size of the story has changed because there is now more work added to the story, and hence the team would need to adjust the user story size, maybe increase its size to reflect the testing work. So option D is going to be the correct answer. So just another note on option B. So where it says extra time, what you need to understand is that the sprint time box within a sprint does not really change. The sprint time box always remains the same. So, in order to do this work, the team will need to fit this work within the sprint time box itself. And the idea here is that generally whenever a Scrum team or an Agile team is picking up work for the sprint, they are going to maybe have some time built into the sprint, in case some extra work comes up. They're not going to fill the sprint up to 100% of their capacity. Maybe they will fill it to 90% of their capacity or 95% of their capacity. So if any additional work comes up or anything extra that they need to do, they are able to fit it within the sprint time box and do it. And in other cases, if their sprint capacity is totally full, then they may just need to spend some additional time trying to finish that particular activity. So you can go to the next page and you can see the explanation for this answer. So these are the 10 questions that I wanted to talk about in this video, and I hope you enjoyed this video.